Welcome to Mystery Commander Theater 100, not to be confused with episode 100. This is episode 2. I am joined, my name is Kennedy, or the Tenigma, and I am joined today with Reptile, or Freddy. How you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great, man. It's going to be good to see all these commanders, all of our group play, and, get at it. So
yes.
Right now I'm on Kinnan Bonder Prodigy, and you're on Krark&Sakashima.
Absolutely. And we're joined with...
the other decks?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're also joined with two of our buddies, Synergistic playing Jodah, Archmage Eternal, and Bad Kitty, who's playing Malcolm, Keen-Eyed Navigator, and Tana, the Bloodsower. We've got some pretty high-powered decks, I would say, at this table. We've got a good cEDH match, I would say.
Yeah. Jodah is the one outlier, but it's more of like an anti-meta deck where it's looking to control and take advantage of the fact that a lot of these decks here at the table are pretty fast. Your deck's more of like a mid-range control deck, but Bad Kitty and I definitely are turn 2-3 combo decks that are looking to get things out. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that side of the table with myself and Synergistic is a little bit slower, but we definitely have the means to stop things where necessary. And also, whenever you're playing Krark&Sakashima, you can turn around a game in one turn. All you need is to play Solitaire. So we've got some strong opening sides, again, from your side of the table. Look at that board state.
Yeah, it's just going to have to try to come out quick, and then right here I go for a Fabricate. I know that I wanted to get Fabricate because I had a feeling my creatures weren't going to really last that long, especially in a pod where... there's a lot of... I already see that I think that's a Badlands down. I know it's a red source, so I just decided to go for Mana Crypt, get myself some more mana, and really set myself up for the mid-game because the person who's also a combo player went before me. So I'm thinking, just let's ride right into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm always sad to look at my one lone island and see what the rest of the table has that they're going to smack me down with. But we're waiting for Synergistic to make his play. Dropping a Wrenn and 6.
Oh, yep.
And immediately destroys your dork. What do you think of that?
It makes sense. He hasn't fetched yet, and he also, it was the only creature on the board, so he didn't really have access to get the value from the land, return it to his graveyard, and start to do that. So I think it was a good hit. I really wasn't expecting Wrenn and 6 either. It was an odd one. So, unfortunately, Wrenn and 6 here takes out my dork. But it looks like Bad Kitty here is going to play a Malcolm. And I'm sorry, what did you play? That's a cool foil, by the way.
Yeah, I just went with the Mind Stone. Again, a little bit slower. I think of all the decks at the table, mine's probably one of the least expensive, just doesn't have as fast of tools as y'all. But
not as optimized, but...
Yeah, but still, it gets the job done when necessary. So I'm just taking a seat back, kind of watching the table develop. You drop another dork to get your plan out.
I do, and here I was thinking there's a possibility that Synergistic would play a land and then drop it again, or he might go for the dork. Either way, I remember I was just like, I hope he doesn't hit the dork, but if he does hit the dork, I need to get my game plan going, and I really didn't have anything better. So if it's going to die there, it's going to die now. There's really no other creatures on board aside from Malcolm, and he wants to be dealing damage to players to get his treasures, so he's basically not a threat to the Renaissance.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does it look like from your position when things are going the way that they are? You're seeing, your outlet, in a sense, the dorks that you rely on getting taken out like that. What does that change in your eyes as a player?
Well, a lot of what I at this point, I started off turn 1 dork, and then I played another dork, and they both were destroyed. The dorks themselves, they tap for green, and they have summoning sickness, so they're great to have around, and they're really necessary if you want to have those explosive big turns with Kinnan. But the main thing that's hurting me right now is I'm just down 2 cards. Like, my dorks didn't get to do anything, so I effectively mulled down to 5. So right now I'm looking for card advantage in some way.
Right.
That looks great.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of missed it just there, but I went for Gitaxian Probe, I paid the life for that to look into Synergistic's hand. I don't think I revealed, or to myself, I didn't reveal anything that was too dangerous, but I did share that with the table. And then I drop Krark, and I try to get the most value that I can off of this Preordain. Luckily, the flip goes through, so I get to double that up. Hopefully look for something a little bit deeper. I'm assuming, I don't remember what's in my hand, but I'm assuming I had something good, and I think I'm just lacking some lands, so I'm going to search for that. And meanwhile, you are using the opportunity to Worldly Tutor and go look for Thrasios, one of your favorite cards.
Especially now that I see everyone's tapped out, I'm going for Thrasios. I would have liked to go for a Bloom Tender to really like get Kinnan and start activating and doing that kind of stuff, since this is a more creature heavy deck. But Bloom Tender's a 1/1 and it would die to Ren 6, so right. I don't want to keep doing that more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it looks like Bad Kitty here is going... Right now, he already has Malcolm out. He has 5 mana available and the necessary mana in order to cast a Glenhorn Buccaneer. So, but he sees the... I remember you told us that there was a lot of control aspects. There was a Elish Norn in Synergistic's hand. I remember that was one thing that you did disclose.
Yep.
So I'm actually... You know, I know it doesn't have a threat to come out yet, but I think Bad Kitty wants to get the most out of this Tana.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's something, I mean, we know from playing in Synergistic enough that there is usually a big, large threat in his hand, and he's probably going to find a way to cheat it out quickly. So we kind of have to play our game plans as quickly as we can. And so Bad Kitty does just that, tries to capitalize, get his commanders out, and start doing what he can with what he has.
Yeah, really just trying to set up that board state and get to a point where you're able to do something about all the big threats coming down in his hand. But Dockside Extortionist, great card to sacrifice. I think Bad Kitty ended up sacking both his Lotus Petal and his treasure. So
looks like it. So looks like Synergistic will only get, is it 3? Yeah, 1 from each of us.
Mm-hmm.
So still not bad. I mean, Dockside is always great. He makes up for himself in that aspect.
Oh yeah, and it's good on Synergistic for waiting a little bit longer. Usually people just throw out Dockside whenever they can get it, but Jodah Archmage, and with, I guess we're going off of your own like good word, but I don't think that you would lie about those kinds of threats.
Sure, absolutely not.
So as we're just bracing for Elish Norn, and right now Bad Kitty's board looking pretty in danger. I know your Krark's in danger too, but you haven't invested too much into progressing this. So
no, when you play against Krark, and even there, that was a sad turn of events when you have to pop your own rock to go look for something. So I'm struggling a bit I'm obviously struggling in hitting land drops and trying to keep myself afloat and in the game, but digging as much as I can for more. But again, and very sadly ditching Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal, which I had somehow luckily drawn into, but doesn't matter. I'm not going to be able to do anything with that this game, so I just pitch it. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things is if you have a combo, if it's not going to be advantageous and you don't see a way in which you're going to get to use it, don't keep those cards in hand. Like, you have to make sacrifices, and sometimes you just realize that's not going to be the line of play that gets you the win, so just move on.
Yeah, there's very few where you just stick with it instead of just trying to progress your game plan. Sometimes you're just in that position and you want to not throw away the combo because it might be one of the only ways that your deck is going to win. But
right, exactly. Yeah, but what we were talking about earlier about the presence of Elish Norn being such a big threat on board, I mean, it takes care of my board, it takes care of any Krarks I might make, and be able to utilize the combo off and storm off on. It'll take care of most of Bad Kitty's board. It'll neuter a lot of the dorks that you might be able to drop too. So we're keeping that in mind, playing as defensively as possible.
Mm-hmm. And here I'm planning on I bring out Kinnan, even though I know the Elish Norn's going to come out. I'm more so just trying to get, Tezzeret the Seeker. So right here, trying to set myself up for a win. I realized that it's either now or never. You're stuck on one land. You have an island. Synergistic is tapped out with a treasure, and Bad Kitty here. I was unsure because he had most of his mana set up, but it looked like he was going more for like the mid-range kind of beat-down game plan.
Right.
And with Elish Norn on the table, me having no removal and already basically being down to 5 cards, I really just wanted to see if I can squeak this out here because it seemed like a pretty now or never situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to be able to do really anything with 1 mana.
But Force of Negation is there. I didn't have anything for it, and unfortunately my Tezzeret's exiled, and now I know it's coming, but I know that it'll also impact the rest of the board, at least outside of Synergistic, the same.
Right. Yeah, so we're waiting to see what's actually going to drop. Synergistic is making sure he counts his mana correctly, and there he goes. Elish Norn hits the board. We make sure nobody has any responses, and we don't. Krark dies, Kinnan dies.
Malcolm&Tana along with the Saprolings die.
They all die.
Thrasios is alive though, but as I forgot, he has a -2/-2. So even though he made it out, he's now in the same range for Ren and 6 ping, which is unfortunate.
Right.
Because that Ren and 6, now looking back on it, star player, at least against me, it really slowed me down because I invested 2 of my turns into, actually about 3. That was really the only turn that I really got to go off with Kinnan, and I got countered. So 2 of my turns, 3 of my turns are essentially wasted. Now you only have 2 lands. You can't even cast your Krark. You drew another land here. What's your thought?
Slam the island immediately. Because I am just grateful that I have it. Truthfully, I don't really remember what's in my hand at this time, but we're all kind of in a position where an arch enemy has been established, our board states are gone, and we're staring down the barrel that is Jodah and Elish Norn, and I mean, not like Synergistic really has anything to blink, but a Dockside is still dangerous if you have potential to bounce him back and use him again, so... We are in a... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say one thing about Synergistic's deck is it getting the mana, it relies on just having the rainbow colors, but Jodah isn't an innate draw engine or anything, so you really have to tutor those things up or have it in his hand. A lot of the times it's really keeping track of how many cards Synergistic has in his hand.
Right. And at this point, the Gitaxian probe that I did earlier, it's, our intel is running out. We don't really have much more information as to what he has anymore. Not like it incredibly mattered to begin with, because most of the time, at least for our play group, I think the intel that ends up mattering is letting people know if there are forces in hands or what kind of counter magic we have, because that's what the defense is what matters.
Yeah. Given everyone here is a blue deck, you have to be aware of counter spells. You have to be aware of, at least from Synergistic, just some silence effects, stacks pieces. But counter spells, especially against Krark&Sakashima, more is it spell slinger focus deck. I definitely agree. Here, Synergistic decides to ping down my Thrasios, and I just take advantage of it, get the activation, scry, and get a land. So at least Thrasios was able to give me some permanent mana there.
Yeah, absolutely. We are looking fairly... Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Ajinga Taxis. Okay, so now here, you already weren't able to play too much in your hand, and now you're basically forced to, otherwise you're just going to lose it all. What absolutely. Are you, especially going right after this, what's your plan?
Well, that's a game ender for the most part. It's not a quick end, and that's something that we give Synergistic a lot of crap for, is that his deck bleeds us. It's really rough to deal with. So I do remember now that I drew into some great gas in terms of, counters. I have a lot of counters in hand, but I had just been struggling for that mana. So holding on to a mana leak, you don't see those often, and I realized that we're not going to have a chance if we let Jin Gitaxias go through. So I try to mana leak that. It ends up working, and he rightfully has a reanimate in hand, which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. So Bad Kitty here, also just trying to help out, realizes if Jin Gitaxias and Elish Norn are out at the same time, then it's going to be a pretty bad scenario of just him being able to refill his hand. And back to what I said earlier, like a lot of this, the reason why he wants this Jin Gitaxias to go through so much, casting Reanimate on it, is because his hand size is starting to deplete, and if he doesn't have the mana to start casting those big spells for free, then he's just stuck with a lot of mana and ways to reduce the cost. So
right. Very crafty play right there by Bad Kitty. We talked over it a little bit, and I remember we as a table were kind of trying to help him through that. But taking the time to use Noxious Revival to get Force of Negation back, then using Veil of Summer to draw that, and then pitch Neoform to be able to prevent Reanimate from happening. Having to ditch a lot of resources, but to stop Jin Gitaxias, it was a necessary stand to make. So the table kind of stood up there. I pass and leave all my lands open because, again, I have some counter magic, which we all can probably assume is there, or just that my deck doesn't really do anything until one turn, and then it does everything. So just waiting.
I was unsure if you really had anything here. I know that a lot of generally you run the Dual Caster and Twin Flame or Heat Shimmer combos, don't you?
Yeah, I'm lazy. So there's a lot of math that has to be done in Krark&Sakashima, and you've known me for a while, Freddy / Reptile, and I am not good at math.
It is just making an arbitrary amount of 2/2 creatures and attacking is a much easier way to go. And
way easy. It's 2
honestly,
cards.
It's not. You don't rely on luck either, unless they're out. But yeah.
I'm playing the gambling commanders, and I really like to abstain from doing any of the gambling. So Krark, I feel like he rarely gets cast.
So, I remember you were telling me earlier about that you really don't have a lot of the fast mana and using things like Mind Stone to ramp you up, even though it just produces a colorless. You have to pay 2.
Sure.
When you're going up against a deck which has the most optimal things like the dual lands, and it has everything that it really needs, and you're operating like this, what's your main game plan going in? Because you're not going to have a fast turn.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess this speaks to anybody watching, and you might be intimidated of not having mana crypts or all those expensive cards to try to keep up with cEDH decks. And this is not to say you have to build a deck in a way that Krark&Sakashima works, but it is beneficial that Krark&Sakashima a lot of times is playing solitaire, and you're just playing on your own. So I don't care about being as fast, and if the game's over by turn 3, there's not a lot that a whole table can do about that period. So if you can last to a point where you can set up your own board and win by yourself, I think you don't need the fastest mana or fastest rocks to get there. But it is gambling, though. I guess that is a way that you gamble, is recognizing that you don't get to take the agency of deciding that the game is over by turn 3 like other decks might be able to.
Oh wow, okay, so synergistic here, drawing into Veil of Summer, being able to protect his Oleron's Epiphany, another extra turn, another draw, I think is probably the most important thing. And if we look here, Bad Kitty, Sylvan Library, being open and really just being I didn't even look it up until now, but Bad Kitty really you and Bad Kitty really held the game together from being taken by either synergistic at any point.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a super defensive game. I think that it is difficult sometimes as a player to look at your life total and look at your board state and realize you don't have too much. But there are some really important plays that happen just like that, where if we follow back to that train of action. So myself trying to counterspell something that Synergistic had, him Veil of Summering, and then I have to expend even more resources to Arcane Denial it. those plays don't look like anything on the actual, playmat. You don't see the permanence, but there's a lot that goes into trying to hold off a win.
Yeah, on the stack, and really just recognizing the necessary pieces that are there. Like for mine, you start to see artifacts, me hitting 7 mana, or just key pieces. Like if we see Malcolm out, then we know that we might be in danger. You'll get to really know that and get to, especially if you play with a play group. But the more you play, the more you'll recognize, like, generally when decks are setting up to win and when they're just trying to fish for something. So Bad Kitty here, casting Endurance. I think at this point right now he has Noxious Revival and his Force Negation that he's already used twice. So looks like he might just be trying to filter the deck in again. And here I have a lot of mana. And I believe here right now, Synergistic has... He will be able to kill Bad Kitty this next turn. If he wants to, unless he wants to apply some extra pressure from other life totals. But I think right here, getting rid of Bad Kitty would be the best thing for him, especially since he's arch enemy and he's in the lead trying to get it. So here, knowing that, I attempt to extend an Knowledge Branch and just be like, look, I'm going to cast one of my game-winning pieces, but because of the board state, bouncing Elesh Norn, having him to have it recast it, do all of that again. Cyclonic Rift on Elesh Norn, and then I believe I bounced Jodah back so he's not able to cast it. So thought I'd do my own little part of trying to protect the table and let us all play, but that's pretty dangerous because I let you free with the mana that you need. I let Bad Kitty free, but at this point in the game, I can't play Kinnan, and I need him to win at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a hard thing about Magic, right? Is when you're framing something as you're doing good for the table, but also you need those threats gone just as much as we do. So in helping yourself, you have to help us.
Yes.
I guess it's any way you want to look at it, but
that wins you a lot more games than you think because people are less reluctant to go after you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Synergistic right now, I know that he doesn't have the mana to cast his Dockside. I believe Wrenn and 6 is actually avoiding, like, it's a passive source of mana because these fetch lands are allowing him to go get every single fetch that he's able to. I believe he has 2 in there. The scrub land is over the graveyard at the moment, but yeah, Wrenn and 6 really just a star player. I'm surprised that wasn't taken out earlier by Bad Kitty.
It's kind of shocking now, looking in hindsight, if we could have sent some Malcolm swings that away.
Indeed. It's but again, it's one of those things where it's a very passive threat. It's only 2 mana and it's a planeswalker, so I think everyone kind of has the idea of, oh, someone can just swing it and it'll die. I don't have to risk going to combat.
Right, exactly. And I think that kind of speaks to our decks too. Synergistic wins through a lot of ways, but trying to beat us down with things like big creature beats. But I don't really go to combat very much. Bad Kitty does, just for the sake of getting the treasures. You don't really go to combat that much. It's something that can kind of skip your mind at moments.
Yeah. Maybe I could have. I couldn't have hit Thrasios with Thrasios at that point. No, I never really had an opportunity to attack. I would have because that thing started coming after me. But Hullbreaker Horror. I guess in this situation, that's another good play on Synergistic. He gambled here with the most amount of cards in his hand after dropping it. Although gambling with Elesh Norn, something that's really just taking the table, holding the table hostage and stopping all of our game-winning combos is a bit risky, but I think I agree with the risk reward here, especially when everyone's coming after you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do we have any idea of what he's going for with this gamble?
This gamble, he already has, we had to bounce the piece that was really stopping us from doing something. So it's not like he has to get something that will control the board. This gamble more than likely would either be something that can wipe the board of Hullbreaker Horror, because that's one of the main threats right now. If it gets back to me, I believe I can win. Unless he plays Elesh Norn, and then I'd have to spend another turn doing it. But probably something to either clear the board and stop everyone from pressuring them. Show and tell. Okay, so that doesn't make sense. He must have... Yeah, you can just put Elesh Norn down.
He shows and tells, is there really anything threatening from the rest of us off of show and tell?
I already have what's threatening on the board, so... Omniscience, that's what he... That is what he... Okay, so that I believe that's what he went for outside of it. Unless it was show and tell and he just needed it to get Omniscience, but... Some great hits, man. Some really great hits.
I also forgot that I didn't have anything in hand that I could show and tell.
So you didn't have any permanents from the
No, I
deck.
didn't. So I just passed. Which is...
that's a great line of play.
That sucks for me, but it's good for him.
I believe I had no cards in hand, so one of the better options that Synergistic could have taken there.
Yeah. So he goes for that. He's got Omniscience. He has a very threatening board. I mean, if I draw a Lightning Bolt, I'm gonna kill Cody just to say that I did it.
That would be pretty funny. It's you draw a bolt, but here Pact Negation deciding that if the Elesh Norn hits, we're not going to get through, but Expropriate, unfortunately, everything's pretty... At this point, I don't think... Usually you vote money because you don't want to give them extra turns.
Right. But
when
this is
a
changing play.
Yeah. When you have a threat as big as Hullbreaker Horror for him to just bounce stuff, and being able to cast everything for free at that point, he can just run away with the game. So one card in hand, he'll be able to draw 2, and really I'm just kind of hoping that Synergistic hits lands off of his next one.
Well, this is where I make a big misplay looking back on it. Again, usually our gut reaction is to vote money so that we don't give him an extra turn. And I do just that, and totally forgetting that I had just pacted negation. So I am going to die as soon as he gets to me on my next turn because he takes a land, and I won't be able to pay for pact, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's a really strong effect. I think so many times, I don't know about you, but I'm just so used to things taking non-land permanents that I'm like, oh yeah, I have nothing on the board, I'm safe, and then I get a land taken from me or something. Damn. Beast Within gets me with that too.
Yeah, exactly. It's rough. So I don't realize this at the time. I don't know if you or Bad Kitty realized this at the time. I know Synergistic knows this, though, that I am not a threat anymore, and it's basically whatever I can do as I'm going down kicking and screaming. So he's just trying to and Bad Kitty is at a very weak point of only 3 damage having to go through. So at this point, I think he's got you in his sights.
I actually think he's going to go after Bad Kitty and kill him. I think he'll swing at me, possibly if he has it, but I think he's going... Oh, okay, no, he did go at me. Huh. That makes sense.
I believe he split, though, because it looks like Bad Kitty took some damage.
Oh, and then, okay, Cyclonic Rift. That does make sense. Able to bounce everything back.
We have no board state to even compete if we wanted to.
Yeah,
You're
I don't have
tapped
a hand.
out.
I'm tapped out. I don't have a hand. I think at this point I was... my only way out was Elesh Norn not being on the board, and me being able to cast Kinnan from the command zone as a spell that I can then start the loop with. If for those who don't know, Hullbreaker Horror is able to, whenever you cast a spell, you're able to return a non-land permanent. So with 2 mana positive rocks, and Kinnan makes those with basically any single rock in the deck or mana neutral, you're able to generate infinite mana and then activate Kinnan to win the game. So very smart of Synergistic. Also getting some amazing pulls, like we were saying before. One of the main drawbacks of this deck is you can have Omniscience, a bunch of lands, everything's free, and then you have like a rock and something else in your hand. Yep. Right now, Synergistic being able to play anything at flash speed, drawing 3 to 4 cards a turn, and taking extra turns, possibly one of the best sports states you can get. And I believe here right now it's everything bounced back to yeah, you died attacked, which is unfortunate. How do you think, if anything, would have gone differently? What do you think you would have done, given if you would have just voted time and he had an extra turn?
That's the thing is, I would have potentially had a chance to stay in it, but I would have been doing it without a team. Because I think with an extra turn, as Synergistic displayed, he was able to deal with you all in the turns that he had. But if he had even more time, he could have started chipping at me. And then it really would have been, what can I draw off the top? And if from what I draw off the top, can it deal with the massive board state that he has? Potentially drawing a Cyclonic Rift, but even then I didn't have near enough mana to cast it. So you're kind of in a really locked situation, which is what Synergistic does well with the way that he's built that Jodah deck. So a good display, I think we saw of that deck's power. Do you have any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? No, I mean, we recognize some of the misplays that happened, and I think outside of the misplays, it was a pretty solid game overall. Good interaction. I think everyone really kind of held their own weight in terms of trying to address the table and control it. Maybe even, I think maybe the person who interacted the least was probably Synergistic, now that I think about it. He was more so trying to progress his own board state, but that's it just shows the power of his deck, that his win cons are also his interaction. So there's
The man was a catalyst, and he forced us all to interact in turn. So, great game.
Congrats to Synergistic. This was MTG Basics with Mystery Commander 100. You're better at the intro than I am.
Yeah, let's wrap this thing up. So, thanks again. I've been the Tenigma, or Kennedy, and this is my co-host,
Reptile 1425.
Thanks for joining us, folks. Take care.
Thanks. Have a good one.